All right, I am back here on the podcast talking more Mets today, joined today by the Mets beat reporter for the record, NorthJersey.com. Justin Toscano is with me. Justin, how are you?
How's it going, Mike? Doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on, man.
Not a problem. And I got to say, it's definitely an interesting experience now watching the Mets operate under Steve Cohen. And as somebody who's covered this team for a couple of years now, what's the big difference you've noticed so far from last year to this year?
I think Trevor May said it best when he was talking to reporters on Zoom yesterday. In his situation, he expected, a lot of teams in free agency, a lot of toes to be dipped in the water, and that's what he was seeing. But he was pleasantly surprised, as he put it, that the Mets went kind of waist deep in that water. And I think that's the biggest change is that, even though they couldn't hire a top baseball executive and they're still searching for a GM, they've at least been seemingly pretty aggressive with these things. Even at the introductory press conference, God, that was November 6th. Sandy Alderson, the new team president, had already said, he'd been talking to agents and free agents and having those conversations, and the Mets have had them since, obviously. So I think it's in this market, especially, I think, under the Wilpons, the Mets would have been one of those teams kind of on the back burner, kind of waiting it out to see maybe what the market looked like. So they didn't need to spend a ton, but it seems like Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson, but more because of Steve Cohen's vision, they've been pretty aggressive in trying to take advantage of kind of a slower year and really get the ball rolling in the first year of his ownership. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, it excites the fan base. The team's got more possibilities, and then it really seems like kind of a new era of Mets baseball, as cliche as that sounds. But I think that's the biggest difference is that you're seeing them push the envelope, to use another cliche, and then kind of be a little more aggressive with these things and try to think outside of the box so they can put together the best sustainable winner that they can in this first year to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you mentioned Trevor May, who talked to reporters. We're recording on Friday. You guys talked to him yesterday. And what was your reaction to them signing Trevor May? Because I feel like that's an aggressive move. And I feel like last offseason, like, okay, they signed Trevor May. Now what for the rest of the winter? Now it feels like the first move of many.
Right. It really does. My reaction was, I was kind of surprised that it came so early because even though the winter meetings, everybody's not going to be roaming around a hotel lobby, it's going to be virtual. I figured that would kind of signify the hot stove season kind of heating up a little more. But the fact that the Mets, were this quick and pouncing on him and then getting pretty serious with him, it kind of did surprise me. But then, it's to me, it's a good sign of the new ownership's capabilities and then kind of, not worrying about that. Like you'd mentioned, like we were just talking about under the Wilpons. I mean, I think you would have looked at the Marcus Stroman qualifying offer if he accepted, and you would have been like, well, there's pretty much the entire winner there. So the fact that the Mets got in, pretty serious and interested talks with May early was surprising, but a good sign because, I mean, that's a guy who, since he had Tommy John, since returning from that in 2018, he's been really good. His ERA has been, a hair above 3 combined over the last 3 seasons. Got a great fastball slider combo, ditch the curveball. But that's a good reliever that when you're talking about the Mets bullpen, I mean, gosh, it wasn't perfect last year, but considering how bad the rotation was, I think the bullpen is, it's fair to see them as kind of a team strength last year. And so the fact that the Mets were still not going to rest on those laurels, not going to ignore kind of bolstering and rebuilding and retooling this bullpen, I think that's another great sign. So that was probably my long-winded way of saying my immediate reaction was just that I was surprised, but I think it signifies that they really are intent on building a winner because bullpen, that wasn't one of their top 2 needs. That might not even be a top 3 need. I mean, if we're looking at position-wise. So the fact that they're willing to still upgrade there and to do so for 2 years, and then about $15.5 million, like I think that's a great sign that, they're looking to make this a well-rounded thing and a good sign, as you alluded to, that, hey, the winter is just getting started.
Yeah, because I feel like in the past, a lot, especially in the Wilpon years, there's a lot of, okay, Met fans talk themselves into, well, if Todd Frazier is good and if these guys were all healthy, it's a lot of ifs that Brody Wagner couldn't eliminate. Sort of like, okay, if all goes well, his team is on pace to win about 85 games, and if we're in at the deadline, we upgrade, otherwise we sell. But now they seem to be like, okay, we have clear issues. Let's fix our issues instead of just hoping the guys we have will work out.
Right. I think like if you look at one of their needs, last year top needs in filling Zach Wheeler's shoes, they did so with two back end low tier guys and Rick Porcello, Michael Wacha. Look, the fact that the bullpen wasn't a weakness in 2020 and they went out and got one of the best relievers on the market is a great sign to me. I mean, that like you said, yeah, that's a great sign that they're actually intent on actually upgrading these positions and not spending, being as cost effective as they can and hoping that these are just upgraded with those moves, hoping they get lucky. No, they're actually going to try to go out there, which should excite fans for, the top needs. I mean, starting pitching and catching, obviously. But hey, if that's what they have in store for the bullpen, I think it's fair to say that they plan to be aggressive, as they should, with their starting pitching and catching.
Yeah, I know you brought Marcus Stroman earlier, and that's not really the first move of the offseason. He took the qualifying offer, and he cited the Steve Cohen factor as a big reason why. And was this a surprise that Marcus Stroman actually took this, considering the starters have done decently well in the free agent market to date?
I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised. I think when I broke it down before, like when I was thinking about it and trying to analyze it myself, you go on one hand, okay, the market is not going to be great this year, right? Like that's understandable. We knew that. Everybody knew that. But on the other hand, Marcus Stroman, I mean, if you look at, okay, Trevor Bauer and then Marcus, I mean, he was the second best starter on the market if you would have, rejected the qualifying offer. And so I still think, like, I'm sure he would have gotten a multi-year deal with solid, AAV somewhere, just because there's some team that needs to upgrade its starting pitching that would have given him that just by virtue of, hey, Trevor Bauer is going to cost too much for us. What's the next option? But, and especially because, Marcus Stroman didn't pitch this year. So I think by taking it's a bit risky because, I mean, I think like, what if he gets injured next year? What if something happens? I still think he would have had a good market this year, but I think it's just a sign of him betting on himself, which is also good because with a good year this year, and obviously being in a rotation with Jacob deGrom and other great pitchers can help, but with a good year this year, he can definitely boost his market even more. But I was a little surprised because he had always, even if he said his mind wasn't on free agency, he had multiple times in the past mentioned that he was looking forward to it because he wants to be settled instead of this year-to-year life that baseball, unlike any other professional sport, gives you because you're on year-to-year contracts for the first 6 years of service time. He wanted to be settled, and he was looking forward to settling down somewhere, putting down roots, having a multi-year deal where he could kind of finally relax and sit back in the same city for multiple years, hopefully. So from that standpoint, I was surprised. And then just because I mean, maybe, like it's obviously a smart business decision. His decided, talked about it a lot. Obviously, he thought about it. It's his decision. But I was surprised because I do think he is good enough. I know there are Marcus Stroman haters out there, but I do think he is definitely good enough to have earned a multi-year deal of solid money somewhere just because he was the second best starter on the market.
Yeah, another I'm curious about with the new ownership group is their approach to extending their own guys because it felt like once the Wilpons got burned by a few bad contracts, they were really hesitant to give anybody any significant money. I know there was talks they basically had their arms twisted to extend Jacob deGrom a couple of years ago. Now you got a couple of guys coming up who are going to be free agents after next year, Michael Conforto, Noah Syndergaard. Do you think they're going to make any serious runs at extending anybody this winter?
Yeah, this winter, I'm not sure, but I would say the first one goes, obviously the first talks go to Michael Conforto, and I would say, if maybe they're in talks this winter, but I think there's just so much flux in terms right now in terms of hiring a GM and trying to improve the 2020 run roster that if I were to guess, I would expect those talks might begin in spring training or, at least, when the new year starts, when there's a little more stability within the front office and within the organization. But I do think that they're going to make a run at some point in the next few months at least starting to have those conversations because, look, that's a guy that homegrown especially, but homegrown outfielders like that don't come around too often. And we've seen like over the market the past few, it's tough. Like in terms if you're going out to get a right fielder in free agency, and I mean he's pretty much the entire package. He's got it all. He's improved his game year to year. He had some major struggles early in his career after that World Series run, but he's gotten through those. And look, I think this year he showed that he could reach the next tier. Now, can he do it for 162 games? We'll see. But I would think that this new ownership group is going to be intent on keeping him. Noah Syndergaard, I can't see those talks starting yet just because, with the injury, you don't know. There's just so much uncertainty as to how he's going to finish the recovery and then how he's going to perform when he actually returns. So that's going to be intriguing. But I have to think that, and right after filling, the starting pitcher, catcher needs, looking at maybe upgrading in center field and pushing Nimmo to, a corner, that, one of the first in-house on the roster talks are going to be about, can we extend this guy? And I would assume that it's a little early maybe not early for just the talks to begin, but for them to intensify, I would say probably the new year.
Yeah, it makes some sense. So let's focus a little bit on the free agent market. Now I'm talking to Justin Toscano of NorthJersey.com and The Record. And let's play a scenario here. Let's say Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson walked up to you, kind of like what Steve Cohen did on Twitter to the fan base, and said, "Justin, we're making our free agent checklist here. Who should we put on the top of the list?"
Oh man, I think I would still say, depending on the money, Trevor Bauer. And I know people have said, well, he's had 2 good seasons, and one of them was, basically 11 starts and yada, yada, yada. And here's my thing with that. If he's would I give him Garrett Cole money or anything close to that? No. Would I give him Strasburg money? I'm not even sure about that, but it depends on the market and how it is this year and what people are willing to give him. But I look at it from this standpoint. I mean, I think he and JT Realmuto in my book are 1A and 1B. But I think with a guy like James McCann at catcher, I think you can, sure, there are other starting pitchers, but I think the best way to a title is through your starting pitching, especially with this group. Because I think you have the offensive core. You have, that firepower. But I think you need another great top-of-the-line pitcher to go along with DeGrom and Stroman, and then, Syndergaard when he returns. I think that would make the Mets, I don't want to say unbeatable because that's pretty much an impossible word to use in baseball terms, but I think that would make them a very, very tough out come October, if they were to get there. So that's what I would say, Trevor Bauer. But you have to, it's contingent on the money. I do understand that. He should not earn nearly as much as Garrett Cole. And I don't know, what the numbers are going to be for him or what he's looking for. But I would say, you have to sign another starting pitcher like that. Look at the Nationals a couple years ago, the Dodgers last year. Pitching wins it. And I think with this team, this team is well set up from an offensive standpoint that if you had pitchers like Jacob deGrom, Trevor Bauer, Marcus Stroman going in October, you're probably not going to need more than 5-6 runs, a night to do it. I think that sets you up pretty well. But I do see the JT Realmuto case. It's really hard given how bad their catching has been. But I just think you can upgrade there with James McCann. That's a good option. But it's tough. I'm not sure about, because Realmuto is going to want a ton of money. I think there was a report a couple months ago from a Phillies beat writer saying that he, was looking for $200 million or something like that. So that's a ton for a catcher. And he's a great two-way catcher, but I think with the way this roster is constructed, I think I'm going to load up on the starting pitching if the money is right with Bauer, because I think he's another one who has a lot of those, those naysayers. And I get it. He's been good for a stretch of his career for a couple years, but I do think he gives you the best chance to upgrade the roster a lot, because I think you can do something else with your catching, even though it is an important position. I think you can upgrade there, but to give me the best chance, if I'm the Mets and I want to win a title, I'm adding another top line starter in there.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes some sense. I know they've been sniffing around James McCann. They've been talking to him according to reports coming out the last couple of days. Like if the Mets like had their perfect offseason, like what do you think it would be? I'm assuming like McCann will be a part of that if we follow the Trevor Bauer plan.
Yeah, so if it's the perfect offseason, I think the best case scenario is if they can. I mean, this might be fantasy land, but you sign Bauer, you sign Real Muto, and then you leave Nimmo in center field. Like I think I personally enjoy watching George Springer a lot. I love his game. I love how he rises to the moment, as cliche as that sounds in October. Like I have loved watching that from him, how he's just such a great competitor. But I think, hey, I think Nimmo's got room to grow in center field. Is he a true center fielder? No. Can he improve? Yes. Like people are writing him off. Like he's still young. I think he's got improvement there. You could live with him out there, in my opinion, because he gives you so much in the lineup. And because you're going to have, especially with the DH, you might have more options of what to do with left field, et cetera. You've got utility guys like Jeff McNeil. So you can live with Nimmo out there. So my best case scenario is you sign Bauer and Real Muto, two of those guys. And that, to me, is the perfect offseason because not only did you add, a frontline starter, but you got the best two-way catcher, in the game. And I think those your top two needs are upgraded there. So that, to me, if you had the Mets dream offseason, there it is right there, signing two of the big three.
Yeah, also brought up the DH is interesting because I know there are reports out right now the San Francisco Giants are expecting there not to be a DH because even though both sides could use it, there's this sort of idea it's a bargaining chip and we don't want to give it up for CBA negotiations. If the scenario
Right.
comes up where there's no DH in 2021, like what do the Mets do? Because I think they're kind of banking on it to sort of solve the Dom Smith Pete Alonso first base issue.
Right. That's a tough one. I think even as long as even back in October there was a report that it wasn't going to be in play for the NL in 2021. I'm not sure about that because, like you said, it's always used as like a bargaining chip, and things like that are always used in negotiations. But, God, yeah, that's a tough question because I think if you're the Mets, you're really, really banking on it because it worked so well last year to help you solve a couple of your issues and in that rotation, especially that they use in the infield and with Pete and Dom. But I think if you're the Mets, what you do is look feasibly. It's it's reasonable to think the DH, the universal DH, will be a part of baseball sooner rather than later, and I think a lot of us can agree on that. Even if it's not in the game this year. So if it's not in the game this year, I don't overreact. I don't look to trade Dom or do anything crazy. What I do is probably, start like they did last year, where maybe you play Dom in left field, and see how it shakes out with Pete at first base a little bit. But then you kind of get a feel for, hey, is Dom's glove going to be eons better than Pete's, or did Pete close the gap with a little bit of defensive improvement over the offseason? And I think that's kind of how you roll. And the way Pete's hitting and the way Dom's hitting, I think will give them some clarity too. But I think it's also reasonable to wonder whether Dom is going to perform like he did last year. Like, was it a breakout season or a breakout 60? Like he had a breakout season, but there's no guarantees that either performs like he did last year. So I think the best answer to that is that you'll probably see more of Dominic Smith in left field, especially because McNeil should play a lot more second if they don't get anybody there. So that kind of frees up some left field. But his glove is so good at first that it's such a tough. Let's just say I wouldn't want to be making those decisions because it's going to be tough because they want Alonso to be a cornerstone of that franchise and want him to be there for a very long time. So it's in a 162 game season, it'll be interesting to see if Luis Rojas plays the same deal like he did last year with the urgency in terms of, he said it, playing the hot hand, because while guys may buy into that in a 60 game season because they know the urgency there, I'm not sure about 162 games. So he's going to have kind of a balancing act and a tightrope. But if I'm the Mets, I don't overreact and use Dom as a trade piece or anything like that.
Yeah, it's my last question actually kind of about the trade market because we've heard Sandy say earlier this offseason that, there's the cost in players and the cost in money, and we've given up a lot of players, so we don't want to be as heavily involved in the trade market. But do you think maybe later on in the offseason, like if they still have a little cash to play with and the price on some of the bigger guys have gone down, do you think they could re-explore some of these big trades, or do you think that might be a let's just see how we're going with our guys and then see the summer if the big fit is out there?
I think they could explore it like January, in January, see how the offseason has gone, see how things lined up with the bigger free agents. And then they might explore, but I'm not sure it would get super serious because, like Sandy said, and I do believe him when he said, they have given up a ton of talent. And you look at the upper minor league levels, I mean, it's almost like that's why signing Steven Matz was such a big deal, because he is a crucial depth piece. Because you look at the upper minors and they don't have, arms who are really major league ready, quality arms who are major league ready, like they did David Peterson. And then they've just lost so much in that organization over the past couple of years that, like I get it. Like it would be tough to trade, core pieces and guys like, and then as well as guys like Andres Jimenez or even, prospects, because they did, one thing Brody did do well is he and, especially the scouting department did a good job of kind of reloading some of that farm system. So I get why Sandy wants to be careful with that. But I think they would explore it come January, especially, before spring training, say, hey, because a lot of these teams, you don't know what the market's going to be like, but a lot of these teams still are going to want to get, like, for example, the Chris Bryants off the market. And depending on the market, if the price goes down, I think it's worth exploring. And I think the Mets, I think their vision, like Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson have said that they will explore those things. But if they feel good about their offseason, I wouldn't expect one of those trades to make headlines or to push it over the hump. I think they will feel good and go into the summer knowing with what they have if they do fill those needs.
It's basically keep a little powder dry in case they feel like, we're one piece away in the summer, we're having a really good year.
Right. I think so, especially because it's hard because like without the minor league season last year, you really it's kind of a crapshoot knowing how prospects not only developed over a year where they really couldn't do much, but are going to develop. So also that the summer, that extra couple months gives you like some time to feel out what you have with your prospects. Because look, like if a team wants so-and-so added in, you're like, we don't know if he's going to develop much more. We don't like the direction he's going in or whatever. We're fine giving him up. Then you have that extra intel in the summer with a few more months of evaluation, especially from spring training and the early minor league season. So I think it's a little safer then too for them. But like you said, yeah, I think it'll be a thing like that where they're going to save a little in the holster just in case they're a piece away, because I really do think with a good offseason, this team should be able to win the division. Like you look at the Phillies, not great, not a great situation. The Marlins, I don't think they'll do what they did last year. The Braves are still very good, but I think, a well-rounded Mets roster is better than the Nationals right now. So, I think they could be in a situation where they really, truly are a piece or two away. And you want to save some of that instead of kind of, expending it, wasting it again after all that has happened in that organization the past couple of years. So then you have to reload the farm system again. It wouldn't be good. I think they're well suited, especially with Cohen's money, to make a splash in free agency. That they shouldn't need to make one of those Brody blockbuster trades that you make when your ownership's not going to pay for those free agents.
Yeah, we definitely want to see any more Brody blockbusters for sure. Justin, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, can you follow you on social media and keep up with your coverage of the Mets?
Yeah. So my Twitter is Justin C. Toscano, and that my last name is Toscano. So that's, I'm on there. And then Instagram is just my name followed by Wrights. So it's Justin Toscano Wrights. And I've got some stuff on there like during the season. So yeah, but I appreciate you having me and appreciate the good talk.
All right, Justin. Thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Yep, of course, man. Anytime.